employment rate dashuga beheto. So I have just covered output uh, output growth. So this slides will focus on inflation and unemployment. So today I will cover the inflation part, and on Saturday I will do the unemployment. So first, inflation. Okay, go back to Badar. Inflation is the continuous increasing general price level of the economy. So general price level. So that's a key word here. For example, waki products get prices much years, it will not be inflation. Overall, general price average prices much than young. We will consider there is an inflation. When inflation occurs, purchasing power of money declines. So that's the reason why Misaka මීගේ පස්සහර කුරින් සතේක රුපියයක් ගණවුණු එච්චසාලා බලාරු මියදු සතේක රුපියයක් ගණවේ එච්චෙහි මා මදුවාන්. It's because of the inflation. Inflation ಗೆ sababun aharunge pasaage aharuge money ge purchasing power dabbamunnadi. Then hyperinflation is the extra or ordinary increasing price levels. So vara order vara avaha prices much diyuma mikeni hyperinflation. For example, bike countries by period तक बहुत 50% increase 50% gain inflation rate है दुनिया में 100% inflation rate है. While there are some countries with 53 million% inflation rate, for example, Zimbabwe some years ago, and Mihar Venezuela, and Germany, there was a hyperinflation period. Then deflation is the opposite of inflation. It is when prices are falling on average. So that means we are having a negative inflation. So prolonged period of deflation is also not good for an economy. The boundary between inflation and deflation is the price stability. Maintaining stable price stability is often refers to as keeping inflation low and stable. Inflation zero gabata kanu nuni negative gabata kanu aharu target ki nuni prices tashed abadus davvamun diume no target ki prices abadus davvamun da kamuga varnama egamana ki economy is not performing well. Yeah. So having deflation is also not good. For a healthy economy, we will need some level of inflation. So different countries that inflation might be the ideal level of inflation might be will be different. For example, for some advanced countries, they aim to keep inflation in between about 0 to 2% to 2 or 3% a level but they aim for emerging economies or developing economies, inflation rate of about 4, 5, 6% is also okay. So to calculate inflation, we use price indices, first of which is consumer price index. It is CPI. It measures the overall cost of goods and services bought by consumers. So consumers එච්චෙහි ගන්න ලිබේ අගුතක හේතෝ බදලවන්නනි CPI මේ measure කරනි, and it is the most common measure of inflation also. So producer price surplus index is the measure of it measures the level of prices at the wholesale or producer stage. So එච්චේ උපද්දා මිහුන්න නෝනියා මාකෙට ගෙන්න මිහුන්න price එකතෝ මේ දිබෙනී හුටේ එච්චෙහි ගන්න. So a prices තක කීනෙත්තෝ බදලවන්නනි KPI මේ measure කරනි. Then there is GDP deflator, which we talked about in the previous slides. It is the ratio of the nominal GDP to real GDP can be interpreted as a comprehensive price index as well. So it can be used to measure inflation, as I explained previously also. So CPI measures average change in retail prices uh, over time for a basket of goods and services consumed by a typical consumer. So average change in the retail prices of a basket of goods consumed by a typical consumer. So basically, CPA we are building up a basket. A basket terega mi himeni a gaumega mi rajitum amukung spend pura goods and services. So a commercial aneka weight eves mean allocate pure then uh, then a basket ke me hinetto fluctuate wegen dani over time prices. National Bureau of Statistics reports CPI each month. So Rajya Ukomi Mahigga CPI Neremunde. It is used to monitor changes in the cost of living over time. So CPI is not actually a measure of cost of living, but it is a measure of inflation because it can be used to monitor changes in the cost of living over time. When CPI rises, a typical family has to spend more money to maintain the same standard of living. So, uh, the purchasing power of money declines when the inflation rises, as I said before. So, if you want to maintain the same level of living, same standard of living you are having now, Kuriyang with Diharo, you should have a pay increase, pay rise to maintain that level of that standard of living. Otherwise, you cannot, because the purchasing power of rupiah or money will fall due to inflation. So how do we calculate CPI? First, as I said, first we are fixing a basket. So surveys are being conducted to determine what's the typical consumers shopping basket. Different weights are based on relative importance and usage of the product. So Rajya Gavis survey the Korean begin the Miharo highest survey a household income and expenditure survey. Migo Balani typical household kinetto expenditure and income mihunadi and expenditure kinetto behigen midani kon bathakatto me boda spend kurani kon echistto me gina mi consume kurani kon kala goods setto so ekal survey hingaga we are actually fixing the basket then a product have a customer use kura importance and usage level the best of dates then the sum of all the weights in the basket will be equal to 100% one. So then we find the prices. So prices are calculated for thousands of goods and services from different outlets. So කොම්ම මහිග්ගවස් රාජ්‍යයකවස් මිහදාගොතකි NBS in they collect prices of about 9,500 plus products get goods and services get prices from the Mahaku NBS in about collect kure from different outlets. Eki Fihar takung, eki Kahala business takung, Malegna Atultakum collect kure, then Rajega the Varaboda Malia Atultaka Varabod Paragang Epahure prices takuga. So I have again they even publish Malaya working Atulutaka working then nation is a whole event CPI they do publish on a monthly. Then after knowing the prices you compute the basket's cost. So using the prices you compute the total cost of the basket. So what you do is for the basket meanani hadaf a basket mihunani misalaka 2 apples 2 oranges so the basket a quantity of goods will remain constant a base period go hunna quantity of goods hunnani bahatta then mi period a quantity of goods kiha varetto price ki so ethi me for that ඒති හෝදාප then you are multiplying the price by the quantity in the basket to compute the basket cost. Then yeah, you choose the base year and compute the index. So base year mi kandalani base year kandala for index calculate kura mi hadagotaki basket cost in the current period working not only year misaka monthly kon kuriyaken deyamu mi month ge basket cost divided by base period ge basket cost into 100 mi hadai. Then fahu we are calculating the inflation rate, that is the percentage change in the CPI from one period to another year. Again, Itanuga is not necessarily year, it can be month, only quarter, or what a common frequency versus a available period. So CPI of the current period minus the CPI of the previous period divided by the CPI of the previous period into 100 is the inflation rate. For example, if we want to know the annual inflation rate, misalaka මේ මහුග මියහරුගේ මේ මහුග average annual inflation rate ki kobakam banan vecha, what we will do is මියහරුගේ ජූන් මහුගේ CPI minus මිදියාහරුගේ ජූන් මහුගේ CPI divided by මිදියාහරුගේ ජූන් මහුගේ CPI into 100. If we want to calculate monthly, what we will do is monthly inflation balam venukam gawanama මියහරුගේ ජූන් මහුගේ CPI minus මියහරුගේ මේ මහුගේ CPI divided by මියහරුගේ මේ මහුගේ CPI into 100. So then we will get inflation rate. So basically, this is how you calculate it. Let's say this is our basket of goods. In the basket, we have 4 hot dogs and 2 hamburgers. Then, from a prices of hot dogs and hamburgers, we calculate for that. Then you calculate the cost of the basket by multiplying the price in the current year times the amount of that product in the basket. So basket means 4 hot dogs vima, you are multiplying $1 into 4 hot dogs in 2013. In 2014 the price meaning had 2 much goes, but still basket there are 4 hot dogs. So 2 into 4 hot dogs. Egota basket cost moment. The total cost of the basket meaning basket mihunna huriha product egge Nigota calculate for edu kuriya. So in this case, hot dog calculate for hamburger calculate for edu kurani to get the total cost per basket. Then to compute the CPI from that, you are dividing the CPI, the cost, basket cost in the current year divided by basket cost in the base year. Base year is 2013 in this case. So 2013 in this case. So we are dividing basket cost by 2013 the basket cost, and we get CPI in here. Then to calculate inflation rate from CPI, what you do is a period 2014 inflation rate what you do is 2014 CPI, that is 174, minus to previous year CPI, that is 100, divided by previous year CPI. So it is 75%. So the 15 nami hadani to the 15 CPI minus to the 14 CPI divided by to the 2014 CPI. So Rajya CPI basket ka unani komichetto. So basically there are 13 major categories Miharu Rajya CPI basket ke terega. Then Miharu basket me found device ko for me August 2019 based on household and income expenditure survey of 2016. And Miharu ke base period ki August 2019 ege maane ki August 2019 na CPI innani 100k. then ehen komme mahakavves arun arme CPA calculate kuramundani August 2009 na ane base year ka badage base period ka badage. So as you can see from here, so there are 13 major categories. Then others category I have put some I think some small categories which I have written here, which is clothing and footwear, insurance and financial services, alcoholic beverages, and so on. Then as you can see in here, the biggest weight is given to housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuel. Mainly because Misaka Raj Malega वरा बड़ा rental prices वरा बड़ा spend होना चाहिए हर income. Also, we spend a lot on water and electricity. And then one name about pete mean food and beverages. So that is also 22%. So egota komme category ekka mideni pete. Enaka mige komme category terege hunnane bævaru products take. මේ සබ් කැටගරිස් එකකින් ගොඩන මේක තේරෙන්නේ මිසක ෆුඩ් ඇන්ඩ් බෙවරේජස් ගේ තේරේ ගොඩනේ ෆුෂුගේ අගා හඬුදුගේ අගා එහෙන්ගොස් කක්කා තෙලුගේ අගා එකද බෑවර ෆියාගේ අගා so එකද බෑවර චි හුන්නාට so රාජ්‍යක ෆියා යුස් ෆියා කී වර ගෙන කක්ක බේන කුරාච්ච එහෙම මෙර ඉන්දියා මාකට් ක ෆියාගේ අගපඩුවා හිසාබුන් රාජ්‍යක CPA එක කොමස් කහල අසල්තක කුරා पुरातन फेन्ना komme harapos around October India ge rainy season ga we mar rajya ge CPI eti fenna komme harapos. So this is CPI and inflation of Maldives from 2000 to January 2000 to April 2020. So as you can see CPI takole dashuga ulefa that is around 50 Miharuge CPA earns again CPI ke base period ki August 2019. So aya compare ko vara boda aguta dashuga me oleni because CPI was very low to 2000 ge harta hutte tere ekavas. Mihara bala eruges vara agu heo echi. Then we can see me period ga vara boda agutan ha me matchang arage no. So this red line shows annual inflation percentage on the right axis. So and as you can see during the financial crisis we had a huge inflation of 15%. 15% the inflation rate already. Then අනකස් දව්වමුන් ගොස් economy රංගලවම දියවරක දව්වමුන් ගොස් එනකවස් මච්චදා ෆෂාහ මිහුරි. Then we had a huge percentage in around 17% in late 2011 2012 hisabuga mainly because 2011 ga ive rufiya ge me exchange rate me devalue kureva ida ai puriga in central parity 12.85 ge plus or minus 20%, so 10.28 15.42 ade terega fluctuate wevene kiya horizontal band mirror. Within a week it hit the upper band 15.42. So because of that asto hisabuga ehabod inflation and mainly because eruga army importers dollar gannan dibe agubodu vima emihun etimi pass on kuri ane me customers by charging higher prices on their products. As we are saying very low and stable prices inflation mainly because rajya ge Mihar in the past years inflation vara bada drive kurani sarukaru ge policy misaka sarukarun subsidy deni me. So since sarukarun misaka electricity subsidy me deni, so since electricity has a huge weight in our basket, electricity prices with subsidy dini dashad diyayima, then have the maharunga inflation was mean dashad dani. So waragina mihun complaint kuran එච්චි ගන්නරු අගුපොට එකම ඉන්ෆ්ලේෂන් ඉන්න නුදක්ක එකම 2019 ගවස් average inflation මිහුරි 0.1% ගයේ. So අස විවාගතකි weights them hunna gotum we depend me one for example mean April 2000 April miyaharuge April mahuga inflation was negative 3.6%. Yeah. So by me lockdown la hedi by fihata kum buying ichige agus wara board kori eti ichi ganna kulina faha gawana kanne ekamaku hama eduwas kol sarkarun me discount dini me water ya electricity ya just so because of that because those have a huge weightage I have also inflation meaning negative inflation meaning April so but then again Korean vettanga inflation much of this cost daan me economy reopen kurima demand ituru wegen daan tami har lockdown going iruga eha boda demand nuko reopen kurima demand ituru wegen daan so ero bayra kuriga vi goten hama me dollar uge agavves badalu aun as danedo mesaka demand evara me supply neti ya because tourism sector adiyasanga pick up and nukure ekam domestic demand boda pick up kurang fashafi yamu हिसाबों डॉलर पूरा डिमांड बोडोवेगेन दान या एवरक सप्लाई अನ್ನು ಹುನ್ನಾನ್ so in that case parallel market ga dollar ge agu machcha gostan gosiyamu we are already seen parallel market ke 17 rupiah ya mihori dollar so if it goes on like that there will be a huge pressure on the exchange rate erung importers wes hama customer unna wes charge puram fashan photo atade so there is risk of that currently. So there are some problems of LCPI as well. So one of which is substitution bias. So over time, some prices rise faster than others. Consumers substitute towards goods that are relatively cheaper. The CPI misses this substitution because it uses a fixed basket of goods. Thus, CPI overstates increases in the cost of living. So as I was saying, CPI we are using a fixed basket. Base period ke consumption hurigota balaf base period ke basket we are using for all the years. Ekamaku in reality what happens is when misaka a base period ga we were using let's say a particular brand of oil. Ekama oil ge agu machadda fashafiyamu we will substitute it to a cheaper one. Ekamaku me CPI basket ga adiga sama innani ekkala oil brand nuniyamu oil ge badalu butter use kura facial stress ama oil innani CPI basket unless it is changed. So astu substitute kurima we will be customer unna miharu e oil huri warabbore agu heyokon eba libe so ehemwima because of this CPI overstates increases in the cost of living. Then another thing is introduction of new goods. So introduction of new goods increases variety, allows consumers to find products that meet their needs. In effect, dollars become more valuable. CPI misses this field because it Anika's fixed basket evima, so it overstates increases in cost of living. So basically, when new goods are coming into the market which are more actually specific to what we like as customers so we will start to use those so when we are getting the more specific things that we like aharun see the aharunge specification na eggotan in a product libekama vanama so the dollar we are spending to buy that is more valuable for us rather than a actual specification and hunna check gannan hama evara spend kuruma ala balaya so since CPI basket ga adives innani ekkala kurin use kuramun diya etivima CPI overstates the increases in cost of living. Then unmeasured quality change improvements in the quality of goods in basket increase the value of each dollar. The statistical department tries to account for quality changes but probably misses some as quality is hard to measure. So similar to getting new products kuriga consume kuramundiya same product wise etike quality rangaluwa kamga vanama ege malneki the dollar we are spending for each dollar we are spending, we are actually getting more value in terms of the quality of that good. So that is not taken into account in CPI. Statistics departments do actually try to account for quality. Misalaka masdalek gavesses misak puriga 200 gram gain masdalek ashar rufiya dibifa miharu satek miharu let's say 300 gram masdale satek gram libunas a eves they will consider increase it consider kureveto they try, but still there will be some things which are missed. So and also quality is difficult to measure. So quality ga dekoravs work kurane misaga quality rangalu vejjayamu CPI in the overstate kurani. If the quality goes low misaga kuriga var quality rangalu etcheng aharo konjam puramun dieruga eti mini basket anna. But over time ege quality mi davvi ege manaki if we are still spending the exact amount to purchase that product astu a dollar kal dibe value davvegen evade quality wise. So erong asu CPI underestimate mi kurani the increases in cost of living. In addition to these, there are some other issues in CPI, such as choice of base year. It's like a by far base year, select Kurevijayamo, a whole index will be wrong. For example, that yes, Vihivan base year set of Fiamu Kuriam CPI, it will be very misleading because this is an abnormal year because of the crisis. Then there's outlet bias. Outlet bias is mainly misalka NBS neves kuriha fihartake ganahane ekamuku buy fihartakum yahan. So if the prices in that shops deviate from the average prices in other shops, so aero outlet bias miyannani. So also there is chance of these particular outlets actually telling wrong information to the statistical officers. So then CPI versus GDP CPI reflects the prices of a basket of goods and services purchased by consumers only. Consumers kanna HI himene basket prices and changes CPI but GDP reflects the price of all goods and services produced in the economy. Economy produce kura good vejayamu prices and changes GDP reflect kure. Then CPI also accounts for the changes in the imported goods the prices. Ekamaku GDP imported goods are deflated excluded as it is not produced domestically. CPI compares a fixed basket of goods. So base year of production so basket of goods we fix kurani in CPI. But GDP what they do is the goods keep on changing komme period produce kura goods take into kure prices minagani from base year. CPI the amount of goods nuniyamu basket of goods minagani base year GDP prices minagani base year. So these two are measure of inflations and generally they move together. As you can see, generally they do move together. A trend but as you can also see, CPI the peaks are much higher in the CPI compared to GDP because CPI has has the issue of overstating the cost of living. So that's one reason. Let's see the slides. How about now? So yeah, it follows the same trend, but CPI the peaks are higher because there is the issue of overstay. There are two types of inflation, that is demand push inflation. One is so when there is increase in aggregate demand for goods and services and it exceeds the aggregate supply. It's a market more total economic supply vara balafa total aggregate demand in the economy is ituru vejjayamu there will be a demand pull inflation. So in this case, there will be a positive output gap, and businesses respond by raising prices to increase their profit margins. So supply demand abala supply maduvima businesses will charge higher prices to benefit out of the situation. Could be maybe you are not seeing it because of the internet connection gap. Slow vima and yes, you can try logging, leaving and joining again. So demand pull inflations are often associated with boom phase of the business cycle. So expansion miyanna period ga aamukon demand pull inflation annai. So root causes of demand pull inflation are often monetary in origin. So let's see. So there are several reasons demand pull inflation can occur. Because it could be due to a depreciation of exchange rate. It could be because of reduction in direct or indirect taxes. Because when the government reduces the taxes, it means consumers will have more disposable income, so they will have more money to purchase goods and services. In that case, the overall demand will increase in the market, so which will cause demand pull inflation. When there is a rapid growth of money supply as a consequence of increased bank lending or monetization, then even there will be demand for inflation. For example, bank takung wargina mi lend kuram fashion. For example, aharum west bank takung airport serega Louis loans nagagen we are purchasing goods and services. So if more people are taking loans and demanding for goods and services, uh, there will be excess demand in the market. So hisabum, there will be demand for inflation. The same with monetization. Uh, Monetization is actually monetizing the government deficit. Miniharo government public bank account overdraft puram fashagin evorani. So even though they are saying it is not monetization, I believe it is monetization. At some point, it will uh, be a fully fledged monetization naka making India done. So we do so it might have repercussions such as demand pull inflation as done because of this monetization which are being done by the government. When the consumer confidence is rising, then there will be an increasing demand. For example, if they believe their income are going to increase, then uh, in that case they will be ready to spend more. So aerum demand iturvegam midani, then there will be demand pull inflation. Then asset price inflation will be there, so such as housing market rajya uh, rental apartments taka demand puravaru iturvegen dima rent vara matiga miulani. So there is an inflation in that area. So asset price inflation. So faster economic growth in other countries might also boost lead to demand pull inflation because in countries the economic growth rangalovima, they will be importing more goods and services from maybe from home country, maybe not from all this income to cover that. So in that case, there will be in demand side pull toward for the inflation. Then the other one is cost pull inflation, push inflation. That's the other type of inflation. So that is when producers decide to pass on increase in prices to consumers. So, for example, external shock is album when the commodity prices fluctuate, when there is a depreciation in exchange rate, as I have explained in the period of 2011 and 2012, when there is acceleration in wages. So, we can come this up on the cost for the producers are increasing. So they pass on this cost to consumers by charging higher prices. So this is called cost push inflation. So there are several effects of inflation. Inflation affects the purchasing power and cost of living of households. As I said, inflation is album එන් එමවුන්ට් එක ෆෑසාය ඉන්ෆලේෂන් ඉතුවමු දියවරක ගණවේ අදදු ගණවේ මුදලුගේ අදදු මදුවගෙන්. So the purchasing power falls. The total production or output of the economy of this effect again down. For example, excuse me. For example, when the inflation goes up and when the raw materials get prices much at the there some businesses will have to leave the market. So the total output of the economy might fall. And it will also affect the savings and investments. So inflation much at the save. For example, if I have saved 1,000 rupiah right now, spend it will be peanuts. No? So 1,000 rupiah it will be not worth as much as it is now. Then income distribution and economic wealth of inflation is correct. So when there is a high inflation, usually income inequality itura bodovegende. So the richest become richer and the poor become poorer because of continued high inflations. Also, it affects the country's balance of payments, as I said. So, balance of payments of this asar kuramung evade economic prices much diyaima. Then ehing gaumatakung economic goods gannang eha demand and kurani because prices are high. Erong exports davwan imports up. So, balance of payments ke position will get worse. Then there are some policies to reduce inflation. First of which is monetary policy. It is when central banks use measures such as increasing interest rates or increasing reserve ratio and etc. to reduce the growth of aggregate demand in the economy, which will lead to lower inflation. So central bank, for example, when they increase the central bank interest rates much as they seem, that means banks can borrow at a higher rate from the central bank. So when they have to pay a higher rate to the central bank, they will charge higher rates on the customers as well. So when they charge higher rate on the customers, customers borrow and nupurane, so borrow could give me demand miyan full demand full inflation ng komiskal halde dibigendan. So we'll go more into detail about monetary policy in that topic. Then there's fiscal policy. When the government changes taxes and spending levels in order to influence the level of aggregate demand. For example, if the government, let's say, if the inflation is becoming very low, let's say we are having a low prolonged period of deflation, the government might reduce the taxes and increase the spending levels. Then when they reduce the taxes, consumers get disposable income much. So because of that, they can demand for more goods and services. Inflation, deflation, inflation. So it will work both ways. If there is high inflation, government will charge higher taxes in some cases, so that the demand side pull towards the inflation will be somewhat influenced. Again, that will cover under fiscal policy in more detail. The income policy is sometimes there are set limits on rate of growth of wages. Uh, uh, Misalaka wages matcha diyayima. There are two effects. One effect is wages matcha diyayima. The income of the customers will increase and they will be demanding more goods and services. Aside to demand full inflation and at the same time when the wages increase, the cost for the producers will also increase. So they will pass on this cost to the final consumer. Again, there will be cost push inflation as well because of this. So there are sometimes there are set limits for wages to actually tackle these issues. Then exchange rate policy is trying to maintain the value of domestic currency in order to have low and stable inflation. Haasako misaka varaboda open economies tahuga and when the countries like Maldives we depend a lot on imports. So if our currency depreciates against US dollar, that means we will have to spend more rupiah to buy dollars. Importers will charge will a product will charge higher prices on consumers. Inflation macam that. So ekal kan prevent kurang uh, domestic currency ke value එකශේගෙන මරික හිත වෙස් මසක කරමුන්දේ so රාජ්‍යක මෛත්‍රී පොලිසිය exchange rate policy අවරබ්බොඩ එල්ද family so රාජ්‍යක මෛත්‍රී policy එක target ki exchange rate වකිවීම වරක ඉෆෙක්ට් and we do sell dollars to the market. We mop up excess rupiah from the market. So excess rupiah horima e rupiah ta dollar fahatan duwa tive excess rupiah minagani. So ekal ek wait gota rupiah ge value ifahattan return. Then another one is labor market reforms, the weakening of trade union power, the growth of part-time and temporary working along with expansion of flexible working hours are moves that have increased flexibility in the labor market. If this does allow firms to control their labor costs, it may reduce cost push inflationary pressure. So Mika by reforms ebagene so that firms can reduce the labor costs, cost push inflationary pressure again. Then the last one is supply side reforms. If a greater output can be produced at a lower cost per unit, then the economy can achieve sustained economic growth without inflation. Supply side reforms seek to increase the productive capacity of the economy in the long run and raise the trend rate of growth of labor and capital productivity by measures such as training and AI education. For example, so the main thing here is they provide training and education to produce more skilled labor so that the production process will be more efficient and then a greater output can be produced at a lower cost. So economies of scale can be achieved. So Mikala reforms against inflationary pressure that there are policy measures which try to do that. So and I have attached two videos which you guys can go through when I upload the slides, or I will show it to you guys on Saturday as well. So that's it for the slides. So if you have any question